I didn't experiment, and didn't fall out of love, but it diminished the appreciation, the value, the love, the good feelings, the good juju around that startup because it was such a well-oiled machine. What's up, internet friends, founders, and the Entrepreneur Curious? You've made it, and you're here. It's Venture Daily, news bits from a founder's perspective. What's up, guys? I hope you're having a wonderful morning this morning. We got two great news articles for you today. They're pretty extensive and long, and I'm going to actually go into the second one as part of my final word for community and founders. But the first one today is 7 myths of business experimentation. Now, I think this is absolutely crucial for any type of business, whether you're small, medium, or large, to constantly experiment with what you're doing, especially around content if you're in the content game. It keeps things fresh, it keeps your mind going, keeps your mind active, and it allows you, in many ways, especially in the content world, which is where I am right now, in the content world, it allows you to get feedback on what you're doing. So we're going to go through the 7 myths of business experimentation. I'm going to give you guys my 2 cents on each of them. And then the second article today is how the obsession with productivity can kill creativity. Now this right here, guys, this is something that I struggle with 100%. How obsession with productivity can actually kill creativity. I have attention here, guys, and I'm going to roll into my final segment for founders and community from this article. But the obsession with productivity can kill creativity. I deal with that all the time because for me, it's fascinating how I work, I guess. But for me, productivity trumps almost everything else. I have to make sure that I get in the A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z every day, right? I gotta create content. I gotta push out the newsletter. I gotta get some of my book done. I have to work out, right? The productivity for me is king. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, but often over an extended period of time, I can get burned out. And so I have to force myself to experiment. That's why we're reading these 2 articles together. The myths of experimentation and how a focus on productivity can actually kill creativity. So I'm hoping that you guys can glean some information from this as you're building, as you're creating your own projects, as you're going out and doing your own thing, or as you're just being a great corporate employee, a great employee to your company. Think about ways that you can experiment in life. You know, one of the things I was talking about with my wife earlier this morning, before I got into this, is just, this is going to sound depressing, but it's like the tension between the micro and the macro all the time. The tension between the micro and the macro. And the tension between the micro and the macro is like, I know that daily disciplines every day of executing every day, creating content every day is good. It's helping create the future that I want, right? I want to build a venture fund. I want to work for a venture fund. I want to learn how to do that better. And so every step that I take towards that is good. But at the macro, the tension between the micro and the macro is that I do all these good things every day. They're going to add up to something great. The macro is I'm going to die and none of this is actually worth anything. So there's like, anyway, let's get into it, guys. I don't know why that was there, but this is Venture Daily, guys, and I'm glad that I could be part of your day. Seven common myths about business experimentation. This one's by Martin Zwilling. In my work as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, I find that most people understand the need to try out new business models and product innovations, but often trust their intuition rather than running a disciplined business experiment first. The result is that you often take a big financial hit and lose key customers before you realize the change didn't work. There is a better way. There is a better way, but if you're an established startup or established company, certainly you want to make the right business experiments. But if you're in a startup or if you're something that you're bootstrapping, experimentation is the way to go. You don't have any data. You just got to execute to learn, guys. For example, several years ago, Apple was so convinced that their new Apple III computer model would be a winner, and that they rolled it out broadly rather than do a controlled release first with some key customers. The result was a huge negative quality hit for Apple in the marketplace that could have been avoided, and high repair costs that took years to recover. I just finished a new book, Experimentation Works, by Harvard Business School professor Stefan H. Tomke, which shows how to make experiments pay off, describes best practices, and provides some great examples of the process done right. He also debunks the most common myths I have heard about business experimentation, including the following. Number 1, experimentation-driven innovation will kill intuition. Before you can experiment, you still need intuition and creativity to come up with innovations to test. Thus, experiments are complementary to intuition, not mutually exclusive. Unfortunately, even expert intuition has proven unreliable in predicting customer behavior, so we need both. That makes a lot of sense. You want to run experiments with data, but you also have to kind of trust your gut a little bit to figure out, hey, are these experiments worth running? Do I believe, is there a hypothesis that I have that believes that this is going to help us move the needle? You kind of have to have a gut to think about it first. Experiments will lead to incremental, but no big changes. Incremental change has proven to be less risky, and multiple small change cycles done quickly often lead to a breakthrough. Even big changes like a new business model can have few elements that can be validated by an experiment. Changing too many factors at once is never a smart risk. When it comes to experiments, do them small. Number 3, we do so few changes, we don't need formal testing tools. The pace of change to stay competitive in business today continues to increase. Every organization needs to look ahead to keep up with Amazon and Booking.com, who are rolling out hundreds of thousands of changes each year. Now is the time to update your processes and tools. Number 4, brick and mortar companies don't have enough transactions. While online retailers may define the sample as 50,000 customers, a realistic test group for physical store may be dozens or less. Yet a large sample does not necessarily lead to better data. In addition, even a small sample size shows statistically valid results for large changes. The whole idea is you're going to have to figure out which sample size makes sense to you guys. A/B testing has been used often, but only with modest results. Well, that's not true. A/B testing is great, actually. It works tremendously well. This type of experiment has been around a long time, and many executives have an unreasonable expectation that the cumulative business impact should be least the sum of their results. In reality, better techniques are now available, so don't skip experimentation based on old news. Big data will show results quickly, so experiments waste time. That's number 6. Analytics show results while experiments isolate the cause. Thus, they are actually complementary, and understanding causality is necessary for effective follow-on enhancements. Using intuition to deduce the cause is unreliable and even dangerous in the case of medicine. Number 7, experiments on customers without consent is unethical. I'm sure that many of you guys probably don't have the issue of ethics because you're not experimenting on humans, right? I hope so. I hope not. I hope you're not. I'm not experimenting on humans. I'm just experimenting on content, guys. Experiments on customers without consent is unethical. Of course, every new offering to customers must be lawful and delivered ethically, and every business model and product is essentially an experiment in providing maximum customer value. A bigger ethical risk is not to experiment and forego the change that's critical to increasing that value. Tricking customers or persuading them to do things that may go against this value objective make no sense and simply won't work in the long run. Thus, it makes sense to be as transparent as possible and to do your testing with as much speed as technology allows. To counter these myths, there are more and more evidence of the value of building a business experimentation culture in your company compared to relying on intuition or flying blind. The tools out there to collect data in real time and provide the analysis that you could never do manually to show what innovations are working with customers and which are not contributing. Looking ahead, as customers get more demanding and competition continues to expand worldwide, the ability to iterate more effectively and quickly will be the key to your survival and growth. It's time to take a hard look at how you and your organization make change decisions today to make sure that you're ready for changes your customers expect from you tomorrow. Well, if this isn't a case for experimentation, I don't know what is. If you've been listening, guys, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple here. I'll press pause on this. It's pretty simple. Experiment. Constantly and continuously. Experiment on what you're doing. Now, you're going to want to have to collect data around your experiments, but at the end of the day, in many cases, the business experimentation is less of an experiment on the business and less of an experiment on your customers. It's more an experiment on you, whether you're willing to experiment, whether you're willing to challenge yourself. You know, I'll tell you guys, one of the things that I wouldn't say that I regret. Well, it's okay to regret. It's, you know, there's pros and cons of regret. One of the things that I regret not doing with a previous startup years ago, and I don't mind bringing this up, a previous startup years ago, is I didn't experiment enough. I had everything I needed to succeed in this startup, and I did, and I succeeded, and I continued to grow, and eventually towards acquisition. But I tell you, I could have made my life a lot better. I could have made my life a lot more sustainable. I could have made my life a lot more fun if I experimented more. I certainly had the margin, I certainly had the time, and I certainly had the money. And one of the things that I didn't do is I got stuck in the process of making money. I got stuck in the process of what worked, even though what was slowly fading in terms of my interest, in terms of my passion around it. Does that make sense? And so even though it was working and it was effective, I didn't experiment, and I didn't fall out of love, but it diminished the appreciation, the value, the love, the good feelings, the good juju around that startup, because it was such a well-oiled machine. And what I needed to do, and I'm a little remiss as I think about it, I should have experimented more. Because it would have been an experiment. Those experiments would have had value to my life, would have added value to who I am. And because I had all the margin, money, time, I had all that to experiment, and I could have made that startup a lot more fun during the final 3 years than it was, because the final 3 years sucked. Anyway, that's actually a great segue into this next article that we're going to be covering, called "Don't Let Your Obsession with Productivity Kill Your Creativity." Let's get into it, guys, here. If you were to visualize a productive day, how would it look? Would it start with getting up early, checking off items on a to-do list, and then taking a triple shot of bulletproof coffee before powering through a substantial piece of work? Now, how about a creative day? Do you picture long stretches of reflection, pen cocked and loaded as you gaze dreamily into the air? Few would imagine both scenarios looking the same, and unfortunately, we've created a dichotomous choice between the two. Our current work world is obsessed with productivity. I know, I would know. We read about leaders' productivity hacks, trying to model how to get into the hustle mode. We are bombarded by books, articles, and experts urging us to time block, turn off digital distractions and transactions, and step into quiet spaces so we can churn out work with laser-like focus. But our relentless quest to be productive is undermining one of the most important abilities in today's workplace: creativity. We've all been warned that in the future, when machine learning and artificial intelligence perform the perfunctory routine aspects of our work, our most valuable contribution will be ingenuity and inventive guile. So how do we create the right conditions for creativity, especially when our routines are so geared towards barreling through a to-do list? Consider this comment from screenwriter Aaron Sorkin, the mastermind behind the television show West Wing and films like Moneyball and The Social Network. He told The Hollywood Reporter that he takes 6 showers a day. "I'm not a germaphobe," he explains. When his writing isn't going well, he'll shower, change into new clothes, and start again. Sorkin's trade relies on him minting something fresh on a regular and sometimes hourly basis. And it occurred to him that his best thoughts were not happening in moments of fevered concentration, but when he was in the shower. So he had a shower installed in the corner of his office and make regular use of it. He described the process as a do-over for triggering original ideas. The idea of 6 showers a day may seem odd to some, and certainly not doable for most, but Sorkin's insight reminded me of the best advice I've heard on the topic of creativity. In 1939, James Webb Young, a Madison Avenue advertising executive, wrote a definitive guide to the process of creativity, a technique for producing ideas. In his short book, Webb Young reminds us that, quote, that an idea is nothing more nor less than a few combination of old elements. In his view, the skill of creativity is the ability to spot new connections between familiar thoughts, and the art is the ability to see new relationships. 50 years later, Steve Jobs observed something similar. Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they really didn't do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them after a while. That's because they were able to connect experiences they've had and synthesize new things. Webb Young also lays out a remarkably simple technique for creative thought. First, gather raw material as a stimulus. Draw together provocations and thought starters related to your idea of interest. He cautions that this is often systematic, laborious, and rather unrewarding. For me, at this stage, I like revisiting and reading Chrome tabs that I've left open, forcing myself to get to the end of the articles that I've set aside for a rainy day, and generally immersing myself in other people's musings. Next, mentally digest the raw material. Webb Young proposes filling small index cards with notes, like you would if you were cramming for a high school final, and seeking to draw connections between the elements as if you're trying to solve a puzzle. Again, Webb Young suggests that this process will frustrate your mind. He then suggests shuffling between physical cards looking for connections. For this step, I've used Post-it notes. I love Post-it notes, guys. And tried linking doodles on huge sheets of paper, almost like a vast mind map. The final stage of his methodology is the greatest anathema to the productivity-obsessed world that we live in. It simply is to do nothing. In the manner of Sorkin's shower, Webb Young urges us to find a way to disengage the mind to allow unconscious processing. You drop the whole subject and put the problem out of your mind as completely as you can, and then you turn to whatever stimulates your imagination and emotions. Webb Young says that having done the often frustrating preparation of work, out of nowhere the idea will appear, whether it's on a walk, while listening to music, watching a film, or yes, in the shower. Most of us can probably identify with this time-tested approach. Our best ideas do seem to approach us in moments of disengagement. Recent history gives us plenty of examples of inspiration striking creators when they were on vacation. Lin-Manuel Miranda said he was struck by the idea of the billion-dollar musical Hamilton as he was trying to unwind on a beach in Mexico. Steven Systrom, the creator of Instagram, also found himself strolling on a Mexican beach when inspiration struck him for the app. The phenomenon of executives observing their best aha moments while on their downtime is further evidence that creative cognition isn't triggered by deep productive focus, but by something rather more diffuse. Neuroscientists would readily point out that this unfocused state of mind is when the default mode of the brain is activated. The notion of the brain's default mode was conceived in the 1970s when it was observed that even in rest states there seemed to be large amounts of mental neural activity. Most of us find ourselves in this state when we're drifting off, our thoughts lost a million miles away from dreamy distraction, maybe almost obviously when we're in a state of boredom. While society has essentially eradicated boredom by leaving us without any unstimulated moment, especially on these cell phones, guys, the invisible consequence is that we've lost times of being in the daydreaming unfocus of the default mode. Well, I will tell you this, I don't have problems with that. There are many times when I just sit and I think, and I allow my mind to wander. Maybe more on that in a second. Wanting to optimize our own productivity is a perfectly reasonable response to increasing demands, but our relentless pursuit of efficiency has become an overcorrection. If we do truly value the originality of creative thought, then it's time to recognize that productivity and creativity often exist in opposition to one another. Productivity is focus. Creativity is unfocused. If your workday if your workday looks like little more than a series of meetings and emails, you might reflect on Aaron Sorkin's experience and ask yourself, where is my moment for thought? Put down your to-do list. Step away from your desk. Turn off your podcast on your commute. Have a moment every day when you're trying to achieve nothing. Give your brain a moment to relax. Might lead to your best idea yet. And guys, I couldn't agree more. Some of my best ideas are moments of quiet reflection, when I'm not doing anything, when I'm not trying to force myself to create or to build. And I'll tell you, I struggle with this on both sides of the equation. And the reason is because there are times where I feel like I need to be productive and ridiculously productive. And there are times when I don't want to be productive, but then I feel lazy. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in today's final word for founders and community. Hold on, guys. We're going to get there.
Did you know that there's even more value than just audio or video? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at VC Hunting, and make sure to sign up for the VC Hunting newsletter, where you'll be able to get weekly news on venture capital, startups, founder stories, and the occasional wisdom extracted from Peter's brain. Go to vchunting.com to sign up. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back, guys, to Venture Daily, one of the world's fastest growing daily shows in all of venture media. You're hanging out with me, and I enjoy being part of your day. You know, there is an obsession with productivity. There is an obsession with productivity in today's world, and I struggle with it as well. I think there's this constant battle, especially for me as a founder entrepreneur who doesn't have a boss currently, right? Who doesn't work for anyone currently except myself. Yes, I have clients that I'm flying out to in the next month, and there's work that I need to do for people that I've promised work for. But at the end of the day, at the macro level, there's no one that I have to report to. I can choose to wake up every day and to deliver content, send out emails, make connections, reach out, be assertive in what I want to do and who I want to be, and make those connections towards the future that I want to grow. But at the end of the day, I don't have to do anything. I can just go back to sleep. I can sit there and lay there or just do nothing. And so the onus is on me to actually create. The impetus is on me to actually do something. And I'll tell you, when it comes to the way that I'm created as a founder, as an entrepreneur, is that I tend to move towards productivity before anything else. There's so many things that I need to get done. There's so many things that I need to complete. And there's a tension that I often feel that as I get into the mode of production mode, that there are naggings. There are naggings that I have, and these naggings are of like, hey, why don't you experiment on this? Why don't you try this? And I say, yeah, I should. I totally should. I'll do that. I'll do that experiment on this content. I'll do this experiment with this type of thing, and then I forget about it, or my productivity kills it because I go in productivity mode and I gotta push out this daily content and the newsletter and everything else, and then I leave it to the end, and then I don't end up getting towards it, and then the next day comes. And when the next day comes and I feel like I don't want to go and actually do that experiment, I don't feel like I want to create that new thing or challenge myself there. And that's the tension that I wrestle with every day. The tension I wrestle with every day is, how can I continue to be creative and how can I be productive? In this article that we just read, they were talking about, hey, for those who are obsessive about being productive, spend time away, and allow your mind to wander. Right? To be creative and allow your mind to wander and to allow your mind to put pieces together so that you can be creative. I don't struggle with that. I struggle with the tension of I can do that anytime I want. The question is, how am I actually going to execute and actually going to do it? And so that's the tension that I struggle with, is all these ideas that come to me. There's so many that come to me that I don't execute on enough of them. And I end up getting into this mode of just being productive and knocking out work, which ends up killing my creativity, right? And not allowing me to expand myself to new places. And so that's the tension that I wrestle with. You know, I just grabbed my jeans here and I yanked on them a little bit, and then I just ripped a hole in them. Oh, you can't see it. You can't see it here, guys. I just completely lost my train of thought because I felt my pants rip here, guys. Productivity, creativity, experiment. Man, I tell you, today's one of those days, guys. Today's one of those days where I have an interview in an hour. I'm going to take a shower after this. And then I'm going to prep for the interview. I'm going to have the interview. It's going to be a great one. I'm going to have a great conversation with them. I'm just feeling a little melancholy today. I don't know why. I don't know why, guys. Here's a question. How is this working out for you guys? Here's a question. How is this working out for you guys? Let me just bring this up. Are you guys enjoying the way that I'm doing this Venture Daily? Would you rather have it be more just me just talking about whatever I want to talk about and not about news articles? Actually, let me ask that question. Here's an experiment. Let me drop this experiment on you guys right now, right quick. Do you guys want me to stop reading the news articles and just focus on talking about whatever I want to talk about, which could be just rambling? Do you want live streams? Let me just leave it at simple. Do you want me to read news articles? Yes or no? Do you want me to just talk about whatever I want to talk about? We'll leave it there. Maybe I'll ask about live streams next time. See you guys tomorrow. I got to keep experimenting, and I got to keep thinking about better ways to do this. Because if I'm really honest, my audience isn't growing, and it's not that those metrics matter all that much, because there's other bigger meta plays, right? Trying to get into building a fund and these types of things, and so the audience, who knows, guys? Everything's an experiment. Let me know in the comments below or in the newsletter reply.